Welcome back, listeners, to Cultural Transformation. Today, we're not just retracing Israel's path from Egypt to Canaan as a physical journey, but also as a profound process of cultural and spiritual transformation. Why do you think this ancient story resonates beyond its historical setting?
Absolutely, and great question. While the distance from Egypt to Canaan was only a few hundred kilometers, the real transformation took place within the hearts and minds of the people. The journey represents much more than a relocation. It's about reshaping identity and values.
That's a crucial distinction. So, when we talk about cultural transformation, we're really talking about the lessons embedded in the process, not just the destination. Let's start by unpacking what needed to change within Israel during this migration.
Exactly. The shift required Israel to shed generations of ingrained behaviors and mindsets from Egypt and to adopt new principles fit for their destiny in Canaan. This sets the foundation for all the transitions we'll discuss today.
It's astonishing that a trip of a few hundred kilometers lasted nearly 4 decades. What made the journey so long?
The main reason was internal transformation. The Israelites had adopted many Egyptian cultural traits, especially a slave mentality. Before entering Canaan, these needed to be unlearned, while new habits were developed. This cultural detox took time.
So, even though God could have relocated them instantly, the more important work was internal. Can you give an analogy for this kind of transformation?
Think of someone recovering from years of unhealthy habits. It's not enough to move them to a new environment. They need time to adopt new healthy practices. Otherwise, they'll recreate the old patterns wherever they go.
Let's discuss the 2 generations that rose during this journey. How did their perspectives differ, especially regarding faith and responsibility?
The first generation, shaped by slavery, had a passive attitude expecting God to do everything, much like a dependent child. The second generation, however, learned to take initiative and act in faith, expecting God to work through their obedience.
That's a powerful shift. How does this relate to the way we sometimes approach challenges today?
Many people still wait passively for solutions, hoping circumstances will change. But, as with Israel, true transformation often requires active participation and a willingness to step out in faith, even when it's uncomfortable.
You mentioned the difference between passive and active expectation. Could you illustrate this with a practical example?
Certainly. Imagine 2 people waiting for a bus. One is standing idly, doing nothing, while the other is reading a book, making use of the time. Both are waiting, but only one is growing during the process. Faith is similar. It's about what we do while we wait.
That perfectly highlights the distinction. In the spiritual context, how does this shape our relationship with God?
It encourages us to take responsibility for spiritual growth, partnering with God rather than merely waiting for Him to act. This dynamic approach fosters maturity and deeper faith.
Let's transition to the concept of the wilderness. You stated, the desert has a purpose. Could you elaborate on what that purpose was for Israel?
The wilderness served as a crucible, a place where character was refined. It stripped away old dependencies and forced the people to confront themselves, building resilience and trust in God. The desert wasn't punishment, it was preparation.
That's a crucial perspective. How can listeners apply this to their own desert seasons?
When life feels dry or uncertain, remember, these seasons are often meant for growth, not mere survival. Focusing on learning and adapting during tough times can transform setbacks into breakthroughs.
A key lesson from the wilderness is the difference between depending on God out of need versus obedience. Why is this distinction important?
Depending on God solely for daily needs can create a transactional relationship. I need, so you provide. True growth comes from obeying God's guidance, even when it's inconvenient. Obedience transforms dependence into partnership.
How does this mindset shift affect our everyday decisions?
It encourages us to seek God's direction proactively, not just as a last resort. Studies on spiritual resilience show that those who practice obedience-based faith tend to experience deeper satisfaction and purpose.
Unity was a major barrier for Israel's first generation. How did unity develop during their journey, and why was it essential for entering Canaan?
Initially, the people were divided and lacked a common vision. Over time, through shared trials and dependence on God, they developed collective identity and unity. Only as a unified people could they inherit the promise.
Can you draw a parallel to modern organizations or communities?
Certainly, research on team performance consistently shows that groups with shared purpose outperform fragmented ones. Israel's journey is a classic example. Unity multiplies effectiveness and endurance.
After entering Canaan, Israel's culture shifted from dependence on manna to a strong work ethic. What triggered this change?
In Canaan, survival depended on personal effort. If you didn't plant, you didn't eat. The cessation of manna forced a transition from passive receipt to active labor, fostering responsibility and a sense of ownership.
How did this affect their economic and spiritual lives?
It created a balance. While their prosperity reflected their effort, they were also reminded to acknowledge God's provision through practices like tithes and offerings. This cultivated both gratitude and diligence.
You mentioned that tithing and offerings were rooted in covenant, not just obligation. How did understanding covenant shape the people's attitudes?
A covenant is a mutual binding agreement that creates both privilege and responsibility. When Israel grasped this, giving wasn't a burden, it was an act of partnership with God. This mindset is echoed in studies on generosity, which link it to a sense of belonging and shared values.
What challenges arise when people reject covenant-based responsibility today?
We see hesitancy in commitments like marriage or community service, often due to fear of responsibility. Avoiding covenant leads to weaker relationships and less social cohesion issues that Israel also faced when responsibilities were neglected.
After settling in Canaan, Israel faced new challenges from neighboring cultures. What were the dangers of incomplete separation and assimilation?
By leaving bad neighbors in the land, Israel exposed itself to foreign influences, which gradually eroded core values and unity. Anthropologists call this cultural drift. Over generations. Foundational beliefs can be diluted or lost.
Are there modern parallels where communities face similar risks?
Absolutely. In a globalized world, preserving distinct values requires both openness and discernment. Without intentional boundaries, even strong cultures can lose their identity, just as Israel struggled to maintain theirs.
Let's recap the process. You've identified 4 stages: belief, humility, identity, and unity. How did each stage build upon the previous one for Israel?
In Chaldea, Abraham's belief was cultivated into faith. Egypt taught humility through hardship. The Exodus forged a new identity from former slaves. Finally, unity was achieved in Canaan, enabling collective purpose. Each stage required letting go of old patterns to embrace new ones.
How can listeners apply this staged approach to personal transformation?
Transformation is rarely instant. It's a sequence of growth phases, each with unique challenges. Recognizing where you are in the process helps set realistic expectations and fosters perseverance.
As we close, what's the ultimate takeaway about restoration and cultural change, both for Israel and for individuals today?
Restoration is continuous. It's not about recreating, but renewing what's been lost or corrupted. For Israel, this meant letting God reshape their culture. For us, it means embracing growth, responsibility, and unity. Lasting change requires intention and perseverance.
Thank you for unpacking these insights. For our listeners, reflect on your own journey. Where are you in the process? Don't forget to subscribe and share, and we look forward to connecting in the next episode.
Thank you for having me. Remember, transformation is a journey, not a destination. Stay engaged, stay hopeful, and let your culture be renewed from within.